Okay, call the meeting to order for April 30th for planning and zoning for the town of East Haddam. Can we have attendance, please?
Gary Brownell,
Here.
James Curtin,
Here.
Kevin Matthews,
Here.
Harvey Thomas,
Here.
Bernard Gillis,
Here.
Louis Southcup,
Here.
Ed Govins,
Here.
Rich Pettinelli, Bill Zay, absent, but he said he was coming.
Okay, Mike.
Okay.
I'll let you start off.
I will start off. So,
We're here for you,
Mark,
or you're here for us.
So I distributed the draft plan of conservation development. I know some of you got it last week, some of you got it last night, but still I'd like to be able to kind of go through the general look, feel, questions on it, as well as pass out. I prepared a handout that just outlines the adoption process per the state general statutes for municipal plans of conservation development, because this then kind of governs the overall schedule of when you accept, when you post, when we refer, when we adopt, and all the like. There you go. So I think since we're all looking at the overall adoption process, in looking at the draft plan, the typical actions with getting a draft plan is the PZC accepts the plan, and when they accept the draft plan, it's not adopting the plan. It just basically, you're accepting the plan then to begin to make the referral process. So while you're during the referral process, you could receive edits, feedback from everyone here on the PZC, as well as those that we refer to. So one of the ones with the greatest amount of lead time is 90 days. Refer it to deep. I believe you are a coastal community due to the how they look at it because of the tidal influence of the Connecticut River. So what we've done for the Connecticut River Valley towns is submit the plan to deep, write the letter, give them a copy of it. We have yet to hear feedback on some of the other ones we have done, and it has been 180 days plus. They are a little bit more interested in providing feedback for those on the ones on Long Island Sound. However, we feel it's necessary to have that as part of it just to be able to do it. The next is your typical 65-day referral to the legislative body as well as the regional planning agency, where you'll be able to receive feedback there as well. The regional planning agency will typically go through the plan, compare it to their plan. However, they are still in the process of drafting their plan. So what they will do is they will provide a list of comments that they would like to see either addressed or pats on the back or, expand a little bit more in this area as part of your plan. So you have the options with any of those referrals to either, accept, reject, modify, just say thank you for your consideration. We're going to do it this way. So I want to point those out. As you then work your way towards your public hearing for adoption, you're legally required at 35-day mark prior to that adoption date to post it to the municipal website and file it with the town clerk. The next is just posting requirements for public hearing notices. Legislative body can either hold a public hearing, they could submit comments, they could endorse, reject, or if they don't act, it is viewed as if they have accepted it as well. We've had some communities where the legislative body didn't provide any comments, didn't provide any action, so it just goes forward as if it was accepted by them. The last step are really being able to get through the adoption process. You'll have the final plan up on the website, and then just within 60 days of adopting, you need to submit the plan up to the OPM. So that was really the dry and boring stuff of just the adoption process, but I wanted to provide everyone here with an outline, because I know you are working off of an extension there, and you'll have to provide an update on that as well.
Where are we at with our extension? How much time do we have on it?
Well, we do have to send them another notification of where we are.
Okay.
Middle of May. We can say June spring. So this is gonna obviously extend this further, but we do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 5 months worth of stuff right there.
Yeah.
Well, it's really, the big one is the 90-day one.
That's 3 months.
Everything else can fall within that.
Everything else can fall within that.
Oh, we can,
It
okay.
can all be done concurrently. So it's really, if you were looking at making a motion to accept the plan, we'd start the 90-day window and then work within that 90-day window of just getting the referrals through. And as you give them an update on your extension, you may want to know that you do have a draft plan and where you're at with it. So if you're in the referral process, then that puts you in a different position, especially if you apply for discretionary funds rather than still drafting the plan. Without flipping through every chapter by chapter, really just getting into an overview of the plan. We have the introduction chapter. As we wrote into the introduction chapter, it's not only to meet your statutory requirement as part of 8-23, but also, as we discussed, the new mandate for the state Affordable Housing Land Use Appeals Act. You have to have a affordable housing plan done every 5 years. We introed that on page 1 in order to meet that mandate. So this plan will therefore at least get you the next 5 years if they are to continue that affordable housing plan requirement. And what it really does is it just really refers to the chapter 1 where we really address demographics and housing there. So overall, we really have 7 actionable chapters. The first one, changing demographics, about maintaining housing options. The second, aiming at community facilities, services, education, recreation. The third chapter revolving around transportation and transportation choices. The fourth really around your natural environment, your waters, your ecological communities, your landscape. The fifth really revolving around your rural character, which also has character preservation, historic preservation elements in it. The sixth is the regional cooperation, which as the state continues to move forward, this isn't regionalization, this is just talking about working regionally with your neighbors, especially from an economic standpoint. The seventh, and probably one of the most focused ones, is growing the grand list. It's really sort of your economic development. Chapter 8 involves your future land use plan as well as a summary of the recommendations and the action items, so your traditional action agenda, as well as your statutorily mandated consistency with both the state and regional plan. So within each chapter, we headed it with the action item as well as some of the background information, and then really got into the individual goals themselves, and then really using the narrative as a way to support the basis for the individual goals. We wanted to create something that can be both in a PDF as well as a paper format, something that's a little bit more streamlined than some of the traditional plans. So I think with that, we can kind of flip through any questions that we may have on it. I don't know if we want to go through chapter by chapter, or if in general, outside of Jim's very well marked up fuchsia post-it notes.
Why don't we go chapter by chapter, that way we're not
Fuchsia.
jumping off. I got a question, how come
Got color.
yours opens this way and all ours are this way?
So that's a good point.
And which way do you think you might want to do it?
I would actually do it this way and do a flip on the print so it reads like a book.
That's how I like it.
And yeah, so we'll
That's not the way it printed.
I know it's not the way it printed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, there's
That was
set,
on my mind.
so when we save the PDF, there's settings in there that'll default to with the printing. I didn't exactly work all those out.
Unless everyone likes it this way, it's not a, not
Don't
like
go
all.
anyway.
Not at all.
No, so bear
Book
with it.
form.
No, it's supposed to be like the book form.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it didn't like retain it in the PDF, so we'll have to provide some further guidance on that, because if not, yours reads more like
yeah.
a flip chart,
I
yeah.
have a quick question, and then maybe this is correct, but it's in the Planning and Zoning Commission, it's Prairie H, James M, Lewis H, Richard L, Josette.
Nobody knows his middle name.
Well, if he's here, we can ask.
It wasn't on the website for Joe, yeah.
It should be Joseph at minimum too, is
Well,
another thing, right?
it-
No,
just-
it depends, it depends what his parents chose to do.
Yeah,
Right.
Is that the kind of stuff that
Maybe his real
bothers
name
you?
is Josette, but it
Keeps him up
doesn't
at
read.
night.
Very formal, very formal, very
If it was
formal.
a girl, it was
Josette.
gonna be.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's young, we call him a
Like
kid.
Harry S. Truman, S stood for nothing, it was just an initial. What the hell?
That was a good catch, though.
That's one of my. pet
I
peeves
remember
when
seeing that
read
once
something, I look
before.
at
I
Yeah,
never
if you
saw
would
that.
like Joseph or,
We'll ask Joe.
Yeah.
we'll let Joe have it as you would like.
But I don't want it listed that way of an formal document, I mean.
A little more substantive question would
Thank
be,
you.
Hey.
we asked for
never
an
know.
executive
Sometimes
summary, short.
That'll be
Okay.
4 out of this.
So you
Are we gonna be able to see that at some point soon? or-
Yeah, this is the one that we wanted to focus on to get the statutory adoption.
Okay,
As soon as I get feedback on all of this, because I packed a lot in here, then I'll know where we stand on everything and be able to go ahead and start drafting that little glossy.
well, won't the guts of that be pretty important to us?
Well, won't the guts of that be a lot of what's basically this?
It's summarizing this,
Yeah,
yeah.
And when we
So I
see
wanted to
that,
get
Your
your,
summary could be different than what we would see as important.
yeah, I want to get your feedback on this, and if we're all on the same page, then I could easily get cranking on the executive
Okay.
summary.
Okay.
I didn't want to have 2 documents
oh,
without getting
okay,
feedback
no,
on.
I understand.
and then we can massage that executive summary.
Yeah.
After the fact.
Yeah, after we get this thing.
Right.
Because the executive summary is not legally required.
No,
This is the legal document.
This is the legal requirement, yeah.
Okay.
Chapter 1 is the introduction, so we really just talk about the process and get through some background on how the plan is laid out. We do talk about the survey and sort of what's been a piece of your P O C D since at least the 90s of your key core community values. We then outline the action agenda, how we handle sustainability, we handle land uses, part of the introduction in the front.
What page are we on?
We are on page,
8 and 9.
2.
Or,
Yeah.
no, 2.
yeah, really 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, so I have a question for 3.
That's where we start.
I need a better map.
You need a better map.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it's
first,
important that we know where these zones are, where the lines are. Can you give us a more detailed map of it?
about the next page.
Yeah, page 3.
This is the,
You're talking about the zoning map,
Yeah,
general, where,
yeah,
I mean,
page
this is a
3.
generalized one, so
No,
obviously,
he's looking at this map.
you would, which one?
Go to the next page. There's your zoning map.
Yeah, I don't care what,
doesn't
it's
like
too
that.
small.
It's gonna be.
Why? Can't we have a small, an enlarged,
This isn't what anybody should be using for a zoning analysis, though. This is what.
if I
the
come
zone-
to this town,
You
open
get
up
the zoning
book.
map, you get the big one.
You open up the zoning book, and I broke all of these things out into little districts at the backside of the zoning book, so all the lots are visible.
Right.
They're in there. This is a guidance document, this is not the end of the world.
okay.
So when you go to the zoning book,
I'm
that is the
guessing,
end
I
of the
guess I'm
world.
asking you for a better map on the zoning book, because those maps don't work.
If I took this map after we get it, and then blow it up and do insets, we're okay.
I'm gonna give you a PDF of all the maps that we have.
Problem is, you're trying to scrunch so much into a little
I
spot.
only have 8.5 by 11 for many, many, many square miles.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Alright,
sort of a technical.
But what's your reasoning for a larger map?
I just wanna see more detail. I wanna see where the R half is in the R, the CBG and, you know, where the, IG zone is in.
and you can criticize everything, I mean, where it says 151, that covers my entire property, so. I mean, yeah,
I missed that.
I'm just saying, in other words, where it says 151, that almost covers my entire property, and you can't see any of it. So, I mean, well, it's gotta go somewhere though, right?
So, a technical kind of question.
Okay.
When this is all snazzy, everybody's in agreement,
Who covers my property?
and you,
For everything.
we go to
Gotta go
reproduce
somewhere,
this in a publishable form, is the printing process gonna be the same, or one that provides more detail, like an offset press or whatever.
CRISPR.
It's an offset price.
Well, don't worry about the exact technical term.
Professional printed
Are we gonna
precision.
print this in a crisper form? And that may not be a question for you, that
Well,
may
let's,
be a
let's
question
get, let's
for.
get through this and then we can address, you know,
But
how
that
we're gonna
would
print
answer
it.
part of
Yeah, I
Bernie's
shrunk
question.
down to be able to email it. I think what we're gonna give you is the actual Word document itself, which is,
And then we decide how to reproduce.
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's,
cool.
let's go through, let's nail this first.
okay, your existing land use, your existing zoning, then really our chapter one is your changing demographics. We did bullet points as we discussed, highlights on those, talking about some of the key indices and some of the key changes overall. We talk about then on
Can we
page
go back up to
6.
page 3, is that correctly printed? The bars and the color,
The bars and the color, so the solid bar represents 2000 and the hollow bar represents 2010.
okay,
So if you can see where the gap is between those
Yeah.
two, that's sort of your areas
so
of
that's
change.
not, okay, I wasn't sure,
So we were trying to.
got this last night, so I wasn't sure if that was just a printed.
We were trying to compare two data sets easy, so you could see where you shrunk or you grew. Then as you move through this chapter, try to use some bar charts to illustrate, the various types of, uses, especially on this one where we talked about housing options that the community supported as part of the survey. Really then with the goal of leading this into a housing affordability section, which is required as part of the POCD, and we're using it as sort of that, that section to meet the mandate for the state's housing affordability plan. So we have the housing affordability calculation. Some of the photos have grayed out, but trust me, there are photos there. We make the comparison to the 10% threshold for housing affordability and where East Haddam is at. Granted, we could all argue till the cows come home of how they calculate that, but we're doing it to be able to sort of check the box there, and then that really leads us into the how we're gonna get to strategy. So I'll pause here for a minute. This is really to lay out what our goal is and what our action items are. As you saw in the end of the POCD, it's more of that traditional, it has the same corresponding section back here. So these can be pulled out in the back, starting on page 77, where we have our action items. We named our lead entity or support entity, our time frame, and whether or not it has a sustainability initiative or element to it. So this not only sort of connects then the chapter, but this is really where you're gonna go through and use the rear of the plan as sort of your checklist for those sections. As you go through it, obviously with the time frame, if it's O, it's ongoing, S, it's short term, M, it's midterm. L are those long-term items. Those are all clearly delineated as, less, is it something you're currently doing, is it something done in the first year? Is it a 1 to 5 year for the midterm, or is it a 5 to 10 year item as part of the long term? And each of those elements is tied to our entity key, which is each agency, commission, board, department in the community, and who is going to be the leader of that, and who's going to be helped to support some of those initiatives. So this is really to help kind of track your progress and keep you on track.
So with all these tables and little things, where's the key that tells us what?
The key is before that section starts, it's actually on page 77.
Yeah, I wonder if
That's the board. Oh, in the text.
Yeah,
I would suggest you have a second table here with ongoing,
I can
basically
just,
summarizing that.
Right.
yeah,
Same thing, I figured it out, but I had to think about it.
I could just bullet them out.
Little legend.
Something like that.
Okay.
So,
And the artist palette is sustainable?
Sustainable.
So moving on into,
one question. Thinking ahead to the next year or so, 10 years, each of the next 10 years, I assume that, correct me where I'm wrong, that our intent would be to do what we've done in the past and take a look at this annually.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. In which case, then my question is, are these, whatever you wanna call them, the last pages here with
Yes.
leads and supports, are they easily sorted out in terms of who's got the ball? Cause now if I was, for example, the Board of Selectmen, I gotta go through umpteen pages to find out what I'm responsible for.
well, it's done by chapter, but also we'll give you the Excel for this so that if you just wanna sort out
Okay, that answers my
a
question.
given one, you could use it however you want. It's just,
We
it's
can sort
kinda,
out whatever column we want.
it's kinda static when you print it into paper. I also found helpful, and some of our clients find helpful, is that with the PDF document, you can just look up, say if you're a Board of Finance member, you look BOF, and it's easily searchable for that. So you can see which things you're responsible for.
Okay, you've answered my question. No need to dwell.
Page 79, your header's offline.
Can we go over affordable housing real quick?
Yeah.
What page, Frank?
We only have 2%,
What page are you on, Bernie?
6 and 7. We only have 2% affordable housing in this town. The state requires 10%, I'm taking it. And if you don't have 10%, then somebody can come in and build affordable housing without any say. Am I all right so
Okay,
far?
so here's how this works. Since we don't have the 10%, like some of the metropolitan areas, somebody could come in, let's say there was a well-drained 20-acre piece, and it's zoned 1 acre. And their engineers took a look at it and says, I'll be done. We can actually put a single-family home on 0.6 of an acre. So now I'm gonna get extra. They come down and they tell you that we're gonna do an affordable housing action. And we're going to do it on 0.6 of an acre instead of an acre, and we're gonna get extra units. And in that affordable housing thing, the best part, it's not all affordable housing. It's 10%, 15%, whatever. If you go and say, well, we're gonna deny you, they walk right to Hartford Superior Court and it gets automatically approved. So what you end up doing is, which I advised East Hampton when this happened to them, it said, come on down, because we need more, anyhow. And work with them so that the landscaping's right, the architecture's right, maybe the number's even higher, instead of 15%, maybe 20%. Work with them on this, because it's not the end of the world. Where it's the end of the world is, and we don't own it in East Haddam, is you have a well-drained area that's 400 acres, which it doesn't exist here. Bob knows.
Trying to find them.
And then they say, we're gonna do this tract development, and all of a sudden you're stuck with double or triple the density that you had in like a 4-acre zone. We just don't own that kind of land.
Okay, so to paraphrase, we're 2%, the
2%.
state requires 10,
It requires 10.
but
To
because
stop
we
any-
don't have the land capability, we're safe at this point. But it would be important for us to integrate low-income and, moderate or low-income
It's
housing
actually affordable
into
housing.
development in the
Yeah.
future.
And truthfully, the word is affordable, and affordable is your fire
Affordable,
department.
yeah, this
You know, so there is a difference, and the reality is every town that's in the same demographics as East Haddam, under 12,000, whatever, 15,000 people, we're all in the same boat. None of us are at that number. If you're at 10%, nobody can come with affordable housing suit.
Right, okay. But in the case of Banner, did we miss the boat by not putting affordable housing in there?
We could have,
Yeah.
yeah. Although, again, there's a case that they're selling units that fit within that affordable demographic.
But they're not deed restricted.
They're not.
That's the whole rub is that they're not.
I missed that, what was?
They're not deed restricted. But they're affordable now because the condo market's.
Don't we
Right,
really
because-
have more than 2% of, all those lake properties
All
we
those-
have?
But they're not deed
I know they
restricted.
don't qualify because of the deed restriction, but we have a lot of these inexpensive, affordable homes.
And it says so in this document.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
outlines it.
Yeah, and
We know
it's the
this.
whole thing that comes down to the deed restriction, which is just a funky way to kind of calculate it. Plus, too, I think the example you gave is a good one, but also if you do have some higher density areas, whether it's a PUD, a PDD, one of those districts, like you guys do have that approach, you're essentially providing sort of an entree and saying, well, you're going to do it, but you're going to do it under our criteria and under our guise here of providing some direction to them. And you're right, you do ask for landscaping, the buffers, ensure that you have all of the proper safety, egress, access, fire trucks can get in and out, and there's many ways along the way to ensure that you're going to get that. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to chapter 2, really talking about the facilities in town, highlighting some of the recent projects that have been done in town, reiterating the strong desire to provide good quality, not only educational facilities, but town facilities. Really, the early on is an inventory, a little discussion then revolving the school reconfiguration plan and the demographics at the schools, and then working our way through some of the recent improvements there, and then getting into some of the issues around public services, including infrastructure there with the potential needs for septic. We then have some maps identifying your hydrologic group for your soils, which is really your ability to provide, as Jim had mentioned, on-site septic or ability to be able to treat waste on-site. Statutorily required to have a sewer expansion, sewer avoidance area, showing the existing sewer service area, and then an inventory of really your community facilities, your schools, your EMS, your fire and police services, as well as your public works, and then we get into our action items on where we're going and how we're gonna get there. And as in the last chapter, they correspond to the action agenda there as well. The next chapter.
Whoa.
Yeah, well,
Okay, good.
Bernie, you go first.
Libraries.
Yeah.
Is there any, there's nothing in here. It says that we are one of 6 municipalities that doesn't have an ADA library capability, okay? And that scares me. We've got 2 libraries in town, and we need something in here that says that we are planning in the future to build a library, a new library that's ADA accessible, because
Right there, under page 20.
20,
Form a study committee of East Haddam Library System staff, members, board members, and patrons, and propose ways the libraries can be made accessible to all citizens.
Yeah, I think,
They're both out.
I think the issue, well, I don't know what it, I think I know the issues Bernie's raising. But the way this is worded, you would draw the conclusion that what we're gonna do is make the existing buildings accessible,
thank you.
as opposed to abandoning them and building a brand new building. And that's a topic that's on the table.
Because we've already had a study done, and it's not feasible to make those ADA accessible.
Yeah, we saw it as from the public comments as sort of like a wedge issue of not doing some.
Oh, it is a wedge issue.
It's a big wedge issue, so I know you interpret it as a way to make the existing libraries more accessible, but I could rework that to provide accessible libraries, propose ways to provide accessible libraries, which
Okay.
that could be build a new library that's accessible. The POCD has to have some flexibility over 10 years to determine what you're gonna do. We know that the library is something you need to address, but how exactly you're gonna address that, I don't know, so I'll reword that to,
You're saying it might not fall in the 10 years span or something? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
No, he's saying, don't lock yourself in.
that's what I'm saying,
Okay,
Yeah, if we put in building a library, we're locking ourselves
Right,
into
okay.
building a library.
yeah.
But that's not really our.
but I
call.
mean, if grants are available for building libraries or something, I'd love to know that.
well, so here's the problem. Right now, we don't have an official, selected by the selectmen, study committee. Just like you would have a building committee for a school or the town hall. There is not a study committee formed right now. I checked this morning, double checked this. I knew, I said, has there been? There's been an ad hoc group going around, kind of taking and poking the bear. But it hasn't been an official study committee appointed by the Board of Selectmen to move on this thing. And that study committee would look at existing facilities or proposed new ones.
That's,
To be given that charge, but that charge has to come from the Board of Selectmen to do that.
But the solution that was suggested sort of gives us,
Gives us what-
we can go either way or no way at all.
But there has been a committee set up for libraries themselves.
Yes.
Correct.
They had a study committee and they came back with a recommendation.
Right, but
But it wasn't set up by the selectmen, so that, it needs to take a different course in order to be anything binding for the community.
Right, it needs to be official. You all set, Bernie?
yeah, thank you.
I have a question that basically is, got to do with page 14 and 15, where we're talking about, to expand sewers, and then the very next, let's take page 15. The first bullet point talks about expanding sewers and water systems, and the following bullet point talks about avoiding sewers. And on page 14, on the right-hand side, the paragraph just above the bullet points also talks about the WPCA has concluded that we should avoid sewers. So were I drafting a document, I wouldn't want to say, we're gonna run to the left and we're also gonna run to the right. It would seem to me we would want to settle on some definitive answer here.
However, the EDC is pushing for sewers,
No doubt.
and the WPCA and this board
Says no.
were pushing against it.
Correct.
Well, let me add,
So this kind of does accurately reflect the condition in town.
That's right,
Right,
but,
Bob?
that's
another
right,
wedge
but,
issue.
but I would remind you
Confusion.
that he who has the authority writes the text, and we have the authority.
Whoops.
No, it's actually even worse than that. It's the state has the authority with the sewer avoidance. We would have a hard
Right.
time expanding.
Right.
But I've been on this board for 10 years, and I've heard a few times that the only area in this town that would be plausible for a sewer system would be Budas.
Huh?
That's
There's
the,
no discharge from
No.
this.
There's no district.
Can't discharge it anywhere in Munis.
There's no plan. We gotta
no,
take
we
it all
talked
down.
about building fields, leaching
Yeah,
fields,
but
having a
then we-
common,
But then we went through every single property and found out that almost every single property could expand upon itself or go to adjoining
Well,
property.
that being said, it is correct. There are parcels in Munis that would accept like a regional,
Right.
leaching field. So.
Yes.
but other than that, the town is sewer avoidance, right?
Well, that study that was done, two studies were done, came up with we didn't need them anywhere else except in downtown, because they could handle the sewer.
If we want to expand Mudas, we're gonna need some type of upgrade.
No, actually, we don't.
No, we don't. Well,
There
yeah,
are
that
two
was our
properties in
recommendation.
Munis.
Our committee.
There are two properties, and I don't wanna sidetrack this, but there are two properties, Nathan Hill Plaza and the
The deal property.
the Dill property. And both of them are self-inflicted wounds. Nathan Hill property has land available next to it that they could put a fine septic system in.
Okay.
But they,
And they just don't want it.
but they don't
So
want
if somebody wanted to build a big restaurant across from the hilltop, there's plenty of
there's a string of sand there that they could put a pretty good sized restaurant.
That's one of the
Okay.
better lots of the few.
Maybe I picked the wrong one. Expansion of the Mutis Plaza, or
You know,
Gristmill.
And across the road,
Mutis-
Gristmill's got a lot of sand and gravel over there, and
Okay,
there's a
All
lot
the
of
way in the
space.
back, yeah.
All right, I'm done.
Got a
So
restaurant
what
in
about the,
mind?
what about the wording of this section? Do we want,
Well-
I mean, why can't we just state that, there's discussion in both directions and walk away from it without saying that we're forcing it in one way or another? That's what, the reality is, it's being discussed and,
It is an ongoing discussion.
yeah, I
It's a-
mean, well,
But let me ask you, Mike, do towns show both sides like that in an issue like this? Or do you try to avoid it?
Yes.
Well,
Great answer, but what's the answer?
You try to avoid it.
No, it's both ways.
Yeah, you try to avoid showing in your POCD that there are,
conflicts.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was trying to do that and give flexibility on both sides.
And the reality in the beginning of the statement is correct. We're looking to find multiple opportunities for areas for commercial industrial expansion in Mutis and the Four Corners and the industrial park.
Yes.
If you stop there, that's a true statement.
Yep.
The fact that, first place, we're never gonna get the grants because there's so much money owed in other parts of the state.
You're not gonna have the money to put it in.
We're not gonna have the money,
Not in our
But
lifetime.
also in a lot of what we, it's, the fact that you don't have them is not the sole driver of why it's not being developed. You could develop with what you already have there with treating on site and get something that would match what you want there.
Right.
For the most part. So it's a tricky kind of balance there on this one. And I didn't wanna identify a sewer growth area because sometimes if you would identify a potential sewer expansion area, and that aligns with someone's desire for a larger scale development, such as an 8-30G,
I was just gonna say
you've now put yourself into a precarious position of trying to explain, well, especially if the developer is looking to, with a lot of the new tools out there, provide the infrastructure for his development to some degree, you're now in a tricky situation because you could have densities like you've never seen before. So when I looked at everything, I thought the safest approach was to play it how we played it, and that gives you the most flexibility.
Yeah, that 6-inch pipe, we forgot to mention that when you asked about affordable housing suits. That 6-inch pipe takes it from 0.6 acres to 0.06 acres.
So, in the interest of trucking along here before breakfast, Jim suggested a way of eliminating a phrase in this bullet point. Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Could I raise one real picky point? On the map that shows community facilities.
Which page was that?
Well, it doesn't happen to have a number, but I guess it would be 20.
18?
It's above
Well,
nine.
the police department,
Yeah.
and the Nathan L, I've got it marked out,
Okay, we're set.
Police department and,
They are
and
flipping.
the middle school.
oh,
The
okay.
one showing the community facilities. So I took a look at this and if I'm a potential developer of anything, I'm really kind of scared of the southeast corner of town because it's away from every emergency service. And I assume we have
Mutual
mutual aid with,
Line.
and are those,
Line and sale.
are those stations close enough to put on this map?
yeah, they
Yes.
are.
Showing that
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
not like this no man's land of pull out the marshmallows when your house
They're
catches
right
on
on
fire.
the border, but it's right
I
there.
actually had it marked, Rich.
Yeah.
The Lime Fire Department in Hampton,
Yeah, it's right down there.
Four Corners.
I've had, Lime comes to my house before East Haddam ever
Yeah.
does.
Yeah, but if you look at
All
this, if you're down here,
Yeah,
you're dead.
So we can fit the Lime Fire Department on there, can we fit Salem's? I'm not familiar with where theirs is.
I'm not quite sure where Salem's is.
But do they provide
Okay.
mutual aid or?
Salem's on 85 and no, it's,
That's a long.
It's
that's-
farther
It's in the
So,
center of.
we'll be able to get the Lime one in on there.
And maybe add a note in here
And I
that,
could,
you
we
know,
could
The
footnote.
line one's right
Yeah,
there.
footnote.
Mutual
Yeah.
aid's an
aid
easy
from
one, but
surrounding
at
towns.
least that,
point.
it's a good point.
Well, the other thing
I'll
is,
take it.
you've got a fire station at the south end of Lake Hayward.
Yeah, we do.
It isn't worth diddly squat.
Really?
Well, it's not
There's,
manned.
there's nobody mans it, ever.
There's a
Yeah, I
truck
know,
there.
but you have
But there's a
trucks
truck,
But
there.
it's there.
Yeah, you don't have a truck that works, I don't think.
Nobody started it.
You have to take that up with the selectmen. This is the
No,
wrong,
I agree,
wrong
but
forum.
But when you're saying that you're scared of the southwest corner, you might be a little worried about the northeast corner, but Colchester gets there in plenty good shape.
All right, where we are?
Chapter 3 is about,
What page you on?
22.
23 about the transportation system. So we go through, talk about the roadway network, talk about the average daily traffic volumes, the swing bridge project, which I had the recent number I saw from the state was 55 million. I don't know if that's, if you can confirm that.
I have no idea.
That's what it was a couple years ago. I remember when they came and talked to us about it. Yeah.
Alright.
That's without a sidewalk.
We've heard it's $40 million for just doing the bridge, no walkway. 55 was when they were talking about the walkway, I believe.
So it's 40 million.
40 million is the actual construction on the
I
bridge.
put 40 million plus because that was their numbers 2 years ago, and they said they're not gonna have design finished. What did we say the other day, of 2020?
Well, maybe they're gonna do it and not tell us.
Alright, I'll just note that it's
There'll be a
estimated
toll
to
on it.
exceed $40 million.
Yeah, we know it won't be under
We're
budget.
not building that out to 2021.
We note the Haddam ferry as well as the Goodspeed private airport there.
23.
So the swing bridge is, you've got it listed on the map as 9,900 cars a day or something? and
12,000.
12,000 cars a day.
That's not what it is on the map.
Well, the 12,000 is for.
9,200 on the map. And you say 12 in the,
That sounds like our population.
No, I think it's just where it was taken. I think it may be actually the date of the date too. Let me check that. I believe
so 12 is the number?
the one we had on the state road there was 12,000 cars a day.
I think it's this one. Average
What
daily
map are you,
traffic.
where are you at, Brian?
Page,
Average daily. Oh, I got it.
Get that, because we had up all the numbers going
In the 30s?
at 12.
29.
I see.
And that's
No,
about,
I look at it again, but every
It's
map I've ever seen like this,
Yeah, it's.
I don't get it. They do funky
I
math
know.
on traffic.
It's
Oh,
the
really?
2018 one,
Never.
so I'll look at the individual legs just to confirm that number. If not, if it's 92, I'll remedy, but I agree, I know, I do the same thing.
And
You
where
ask
did you-
the legs, it's like, how did you get that count?
and so,
But we don't take the counts.
I know, I'm
Get it
not
from the
blaming you,
state.
but
Yeah.
200 to 300 cars on the ferry a day?
That sounds a lot.
Never happens.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they publish.
They
Yeah.
wanna stay in business. That's just basic.
Well, you know, it's coming from the state, so.
They're lying.
It is
You know,
exactly
I'm
the
shocked.
state.
Les?
I listen to that ferry every day across that river,
That's a lot of trips.
and I see the
It's
cars,
impossible to get that.
1 or 2 cars on
Yeah,
it.
They like to preserve the ferry, so I don't want to put out a
That's-
Is
number.
that the
That's-
combined ferries?
That is, no, that's the
That's
headline.
just the Haddam ferry. It's not.
And it averages 200.
It averages to.
That works to our, strike this, if that works to
Exactly.
our
How many cars
advantage.
can they get on it? 10?
Let it fly.
Honestly, this is like, I'll sidetrack quickly, but it's like the fast track ridership numbers. When we did
I would say in the
it.
summer they
When
exceed
we
that.
did the TOD master plan for downtown New Britain, it's the
That's
fast
just
track
trying not
number.
far off.
Well,
Yeah.
you
We
probably,
can't change the fact, the figures, because
No,
They come
We
from
don't.
the state.
we're not gonna make it.
the state supplied them.
probably
I
wanna
do
gross them up
agree
so that they don't get rid
that
of
they're
it.
aspirational
Exactly.
to some degree.
Unrealistically aspirational. The thing fits like 4 cars.
If it's 4 cars.
No,
No,
at least 10 on there.
It's like 6 cars.
Every,
I've never-
at least 10.
Jacob,
Three,
but
six,
Yeah.
Depends what you drive.
at least
Depends on
9
the cars.
9 to 12, I think.
I was thinking 9.
Yeah.
They picked
9.
one
9, I
holiday
think, yeah.
weekend.
They count
And they
also
counted the
every
cars.
time a kid brings.
Okay, where are we?
Going to chapter 4, I believe.
Back on track is where we
Yep.
are.
Yeah.
That's my job.
we talk about the public transportation system, the, nine-town transit, levels of service there. We also spend some time talking about, right-of-ways for bicycle shoulders and some action items
Yeah.
for that, recognizing that it's not transportation, it's more recreation, but it falls in the transportation section. Most of it's a little bit dry. We talk about some really, the overall network, some traffic calming, but some of the new stuff that we do talk about is sort of the crash map and hopes that that helps kind of help move some, and that's on page 27, help move some agenda items, especially as we talk about East Haddam Village, where, getting through the crash data, we have a hotspot there. It's probably one of your biggest hotspots. It is your biggest hotspot in town. Helps to probably support some additional infrastructure improvements there.
On the map that directly follows the
Yes,
crash hotspot,
yes.
DOT functional classification of roadways,
Yes.
how do they explain that the east side of Lake Hayward and a hunk up along Ackley Cemetery are urbanized areas? I'm just curious.
I
Not
argued
urbanized,
this with
it's a
him.
major, it's a collector.
No. You see,
Oh,
you see the brown,
color.
Yeah,
brown area? When you go to the US Census and you go and print
That's exactly it.
and so I put in a request for them to eliminate it because there's nobody there. And it didn't happen, or they haven't responded to it, because they said, you made a mistake. That is definitely not an urbanized area, even with the cottages.
Well,
But I haven't got a response from that, because, it's the Census Bureau, and what do they know?
Anyway.
we
I was
could just Photoshop that yellow color off the map.
I think so, because
Yeah, that should go.
It's not our analysis.
yeah,
so you know.
it's US
Make
Census,
it go away.
Yeah,
and it's wrong,
Yeah.
and they were requested to change it.
okay. Yeah, we'll just Photoshop the yellow off.
Cool.
For the crash hotspot in the appendices, will there be a summary from the crash data? Because without that, we don't really know what's going on.
Why don't we Photoshop some
Rear-ending
additional
just
firehouses?
At whatever level of specificity I have, I'll put in
I
there.
love this guy.
Because,
Then we'll never
you
get a
know,
new
since
one.
they no longer publish what was the data set that was like the Bible for traffic, I can't remember, you know what I'm talking about? And then for liability, they
Right.
basically redacted all of that information. I don't know what they give us in this, I'll look deep into it.
Okay.
There was a certain criteria for crashes, but I don't know if we're doing, the severity or the collision types because of liability issues.
Okay. But if that is available, that's helpful.
Yeah, that
This
would
could
be,
just be a bunch of idiots driving along, as opposed to a problem.
yeah, it could be people taking selfies as they go by
The bridge.
the bridge. Did you see that in the news about everybody falling off the Grand Canyon?
Oh, yeah.
From,
Darwin,
Really?
Darwin Award.
you don't need to put signs up. It's taking care of itself.
okay.
While we're on transportation, I was talking to Brad Parker the other day. He had 24,000 sign-ins in the senior center last year. And I'm thinking that there should be some piece in here, and I don't know, I can't find it, I don't know, maybe it's here, about senior transportation and looking forward, there might be a greater need for additional.
It's in there.
Something here.
I
In
remember,
the action
I just
items,
read it
but it's not
tonight.
in transportation.
Yeah.
It's under services.
I could drive you someplace if you want.
That's a very nice
I
stretch.
think the idea is to have seniors.
it is in there?
breathe in, not
It is in
drive.
there.
Yeah.
In the
I mean,
back
if he
seat.
needs help, I mean.
But they just had them separated
You're
between
gonna need
those
help
that drive.
before me.
Nice to move back to New York.
So then we go through our, action agenda items, I won't spend a lot of time, on it. We spent
Hold on a
several-
second, Mike. Where is it written in the chapter about the senior? Just
When
so
we get down to the
Bernie
services.
knows.
In service.
Thanks, Barry.
What, sir?
It's under services.
Give me the page number.
I had on page 81 about continue to monitor adequacy of the town's senior center to be able to meet the needs of its growing population, explore, well, it's additional outdoor activities. We have one in there about transportation, but that's not it, I jumped the gun on that one.
Improve the ability to deliver social services by continuing to provide transportation to seniors when needed for elections, town offices, doctor visits, etc.
Yes,
Okay, that covers it?
Which they do.
they do.
Okay, you okay?
Okay, yeah.
Biggest thing is shopping for food.
Chapter 3,
Chapter 4.
4, whoops, sorry.
Protect East Haddam's landscape, waters, and natural resources, or natural environment. A lot of the early part is about the different stewardship activities, not only from a drinking water, water quality supply, but really getting into the impairment of water bodies and the different plans that have been put in place, whether it's, getting through, the watershed studies themselves. But we really tried to kind of take that part, segue a little bit into some of the more scenic areas of it, as well as then make another segue into the importance of MS4 for stormwater and as it protects the different water bodies. We then go through getting into some of the natural resources and diversity, talking about the Wildlife Action Plan, talking about the Natural Diversity Database, and then talking about different invasive species. This then pivots over into a more, I guess it would be a sustainability, really a conservation focus, and highlighting the solar farm, highlighting work that you've done at the various facilities, and looking at ways to be able to improve your recycling efforts, as well as acknowledging the acceptance of e-waste streams. We then sort of wrap this section up with one of the more important themes that came out of a lot of our meetings and workshops was, how this is an important recreation. Your open spaces, your water bodies are really some of your big drivers for quality of life, not only in town, but others coming to town. So that sort of drives the visitations in town or your tourism and recreation industry. Over on page 37 then, we have our open space inventory map, which shows all the various different categories, as well as where there are conservation areas and easements on properties. The other map goes through the watersheds at the sub-regional basin, as well as the 2016 list of your impaired water courses and
I
whatnot.
can kill that.
Right.
Here's the reason why. We went into a drought. They went and took samples in the 8 Mile River. It's the only river they took samples of.
Pristine.
Yeah, they took the samples there, but they didn't take it anywhere else. So when it came down to it, they said, could you do a sanitary survey and find out what it's impaired? Because they wanted to blame the agriculture on it. So basically what it came down was
Really?
beavers, muskrat, otter.
Yeah, the stuff that lives in the woods.
It's background bacteria.
Yeah, so I would kill this because the rest of this wasn't sampled, and if we sampled the Moodus River and the Sucker Brook and all that, because of
It's
the
the same
drought,
thing.
we would've had the same thing.
Gotcha.
Everything was impaired by wildlife.
Yeah, because it's
Would-
still looked at.
Which then,
That's a hurdle we cannot jump over.
I gotcha.
The state will not take us off the impairment list. And it's crazy, but.
Yeah.
but we don't have to advertise.
Towns lost, took it off.
So you wanna
But then-
eliminate the map?
I'm removing the map of the impaired water
I
bodies.
don't think you can change it, it's a
That's
state
the question I
map,
had.
isn't it?
Well, I can't change the
Eric,
map.
what do they mean by
No.
that?
No,
You
we're
don't
just
have
not
to
gonna.
print it.
But I can include the map.
Okay.
So then, just for consistency's sake, at the top of page 33, it says maps that show the impairment are included, so that sentence needs to go.
That's marked off already.
Can we say something about the effort of the Lakes Association in trying to,
It's in there.
Does
It's in there.
does that?
It was in the, with the,
Page
Town Lake
34.
Associations in 34, page 34.
34?
And the only thing I
Right
did
hand
on
side.
that, you'll see my note, It said kill the picture of the blue-green algae.
Yeah,
Because you
right.
referenced East Hampton.
Yeah, I said same thing.
East Hampton's created their own problem because they put sewers in, but they didn't put water in. So they take the water from their well, they dump it into the sewer, they put it in the Connecticut River Basin, then the poor lake gets no water to recharge it, even if it was through septic systems. So then they just get the runoff at the top, which
Yeah.
is full of fertilizers
Riser.
and hot off the tar.
Yeah.
And, you know, Bob Jantos from
Runs
Land
like crazy.
25 years ago said, resistance is futile. They're gonna always have algae blooms unless they introduce the water.
Water back in.
Yeah.
All right, I'll remove it.
But we couldn't say in the strategy of, let's see, where am I? Promoting the use, supporting the Lakes Association in promoting the use of non-fertilizers and da-da-da, just, we don't need to say that.
Well, it is there.
And doesn't that encumber the town to support the Lakes Association? If the Lake Association wants to do it, that's fine.
They do, they're actively
Yeah,
trying to do it.
They are
But
actively
does-
trying to do it, so what I have is the EHLA is actively educating, residents to reduce stormwater, pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, and other harmful chemicals, and the algae blooms. And
Yeah, no, I was just thinking more in the bullet points at the end, the
It's there
strategies.
too.
It's there too.
Well, it doesn't specify the Lakes Association, but,
It doesn't.
It does.
I didn't hear. I caught you on that.
You got it in there?
because
Yeah.
you're supposed to be writing grants for them.
Yes. Huh?
Well, I don't know about that.
Say it again.
I say you're supposed to be looking for grants for the
Did.
Lakes.
Found two.
Did you really?
Get it, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
On page 36, at the, on the top right hand, first bullet point on the right-hand side, it says, has 7 state parks, preserves, 4 town-owned recreation areas.
I got that.
And a single land trust property.
I
You got that?
I got
You
that.
got that one?
Yeah. Nature Conservancy Land Trusts, yeah.
A single property.
That's why there's a lot
I
of.
missed
We
that.
worked real hard for
Okay, you're,
those.
Yeah, the land trust would be very upset at us.
Yeah, they would.
Good catch on that one.
Single interest property. Oh,
yeah, and the map shows more than one.
There's no 500-year flood associated with the Connecticut River.
what is that one?
It's a good point.
Okay.
Or the Salmon River, or the lakes.
But when you look at the map, they don't have when you look at the FEMA map, they don't have the 500-year flood.
Not on the,
Okay.
That's why. We can show you what that is. If you go deeper into their mapping.
yeah, if you,
Has Bastion ever really flooded? The dam takes care of everything now.
Yeah, the dam actually, you had a 350-year storm, and I don't think anybody on Bastion Lake or Lake Hayward reported damage.
I could see the reservoir,
The reservoir had it.
yeah, but not
Because
Bastion.
the reservoir, when you go across and you look at those guardrails.
Yeah.
The water was up to the guardrails. So that would.
But you still have to have it listed here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that hurts everyone's
And that-
insurance.
It kills everybody's insurance in Lake
Yeah.
Hayward Nation. Because that line is so thick that they perceive that you could be 10 feet above the lake and,
Oh, you go,
farther than that.
you go pay Bob Weaver
flood
a
cert,
few bucks.
well,
and-
flood certificate,
Right.
flood elevation certificate.
But it beats paying $3,000 a year for
Oh, yeah, no, I mean,
insurance.
Keeps
I
the
got
sur-
2 of them.
Keeps the local surveyor busy.
He retired. Gotta find a new one.
So we have the reported FEMA mapping and then the state's natural diversity database area on the opposite page. Then we go through our action items and then move into our,
I got one question. In the middle here, you have ensure that the state regularly feeds catch bases on state highways in order to be compliant with MS4. How the hell do we do that?
you ask.
Just ask? Okay.
Okay, we got a mandate of MS4, we all have that mandate.
Well, because they called me up one time, they wanted to know where stuff was going, and I said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a list when you give me mine, yours.
And how did that work out?
Never heard from him again.
Don't ever do it.
Well, I imagine when you ask this request,
Same.
you'll never hear from them, you're gonna get the same response.
Yeah, we'll
Does
call.
does it make a difference that we're a tier 2 MS4 town versus tier 1?
Oh, yeah.
And should we say that in here, or?
Well,
I don't know enough about it.
right now, you know, the tier 1 towns, the filing requirements, you
Right.
know, is a half a job in itself.
Yeah.
You know, right now, if we told Beth and Public Works that they were all of a sudden a tier 1, they'd be turning around saying, give me a half-time person just to file all the documents with DEP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we say that we're tier 2?
I don't think we should
Is it
call
not
attention to
necessary?
Yeah, I
anything.
don't think we should just let them know anyway.
Okay.
Let's see them dogs lie.
There'll be more questions coming into your office going, what is that? Tier 2.
Chapter 5, we talk about the community values, historic preservation, rural character. Inserted some of the postcards from the future that really spoke to that. We recaptured some of the intro section, which I thought was well put together from the old PUCD of just the history of town, and then pointed others to go visit the Historical Society museum to learn more about it.
Query asked, you know why we don't know where this one was?
Right,
It was burnt down before we were born. It's the
right, figured it was.
Chase Stone Mill, which was next to Wigwam. And
Wow.
then all that was left for a while was just a portion of it to the left. Yeah.
Okay.
Where that pond is, across the street from Wigwam?
Yeah, at the base
Yeah.
of Wigwam Hill, the
Yeah.
ponds to the
Yeah.
right.
Down behind the teens,
Youth and Family
youth and
Services.
family
Or
services.
safe walk to the
That's where that is.
soccer fields.
Yeah, we used to go through there.
Yeah.
It was all opened up back
Yeah.
back then. Yeah.
Yeah, like the three of us would, yeah.
Had to cross that big log or whatever.
Yep. With spikes.
On the way to Mr. Smith class here, right?
No, this is after, this is for soccer.
These newcomers, they're all jealous.
The freshmen always swam.
They always did. I was smart, I'd go home and then go.
We talk about the long-standing values of driving any sort of development, commercial, or established centers to protect your rural character. We also talk about growth in agritourism and how that helps with the community character and values, and later we tie it into more of the economic side of things. We just go through a listing of a lot of the different activities that you have and programs that you provide in order to ensure that you continue with that agricultural heritage for your community. More so of acknowledgement of all the, really a lot of the great stuff that you've been doing. We then move into open space, talk about open space programs, acquisitions, get into the inventory there, and then segue right into our conservation, rural character, sort of our heritage-based action items.
Now, you have all these great pictures, are you filling them in, or?
Yeah.
We have them, they're pictures, I view them in the Word document, but when I make a PDF, they show up as gray boxes.
Is it a good picture of the Millington Green Schoolhouse? Have you ever seen that
Yeah.
Schoolhouse, that's a pretty one also.
Yeah, it is a pretty one, and kind of disappointed that they're not highlighted, because those are some of our best stuff, picture-wise. So, in the final book, they exist, they're just not printing for whatever reason. I made the PDF.
Because you're not a millennial.
I'm not a millennial.
They may have different extensions like JPEG that are not compatible with PDF.
Yeah, when we inserted them, we may have to go and insert them in a different way, I think. Because you can see them on the screen, but then when, in the Word document, but then when you make a PDF out of it, they turn to a gray box.
He's not a millennial either, and he knows why. It's not a good sign.
He's retired, so it's almost equivalent to being a millennial. you have time to explore.
Well, I have
technology.
40 years of IT experience behind me.
We'll see that too.
Whoops.
I was like a tweener where we had technology pop, and I felt like I got left in between on it somewhere. Yeah, so you will have the great pictures. So these get through a lot of our action items there. Chapter 6 is about sort of, acknowledging the regional dynamic of the region.
Just quickly on page 55, the Essex steam train picture approaching Gillette Castle stop. Is there actually a station up there?
No.
That's not the,
There is now.
They put it on a bus.
can, but they pull up a step.
Yeah, on special occasions you can, they consider it a
Yeah,
stop.
but there's no.
Doesn't look
this
like
is-
that.
This is down the track, that's not.
I'll get rid of the word stop, but I like the picture.
Yeah, the picture's fine, but
Good point.
it's not.
I've seen it
it's
before
not
where they
eagle.
pull up the little platform.
55.
Yeah, that's not
We got a
taking
train
Put on a
showing
train on
up
the
and
side of the river.
Saying it's at Gillette's Castle, and it's not.
Right.
Maybe walk some water.
Let's eat
Oh, yeah,
Gillette's
but,
train.
they do go up to Eagle's Landing
Yeah, they
and
do.
stop,
Yeah.
and then you could take a shuttle over, they'll let you
They
cross.
call that
or-
Goodspeed Landing, right?
Or is this one near the ferry, that you could take the cross to the ferry maybe?
This
Maybe
one's
that's
near the
it.
ferry.
Okay,
Yeah, that's where that is. That's the
maybe that is, I was thinking Eagle Landing, that's not Eagle Landing.
Kings Highway. At
Oh,
the
geez,
bottom
yeah.
of Kings Highway, there's
Asphalt.
that
Yeah. They put a lean-to
We
down
put
there?
a little state park at the
Yeah.
park.
Oh, okay, I haven't been down there for a while.
little station there.
Yeah, I see that.
So it's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, technically, yeah. It's
There's just a river in between them.
So it's really the headline ferry stop.
it's a hike and a
Yeah, it's
ferry.
put up to Hadline Ferry stop,
Yeah.
Chester Hadline Ferry.
It's actually Chester.
Say Chester.
It sounds like you're gonna be playing.
Chester.
Hurry the hell up.
I'm trying to tie it all together.
No, I'm just stricken myself. It's too early.
So
That's
I'm
advertisement.
I'm sure,
Let me own that.
Just need every rule in this
I'm
thing
sure
here.
Jim already caught this, but the official name of the economic development, whatever it is, Mr. Chairman, the Economic Development
Council.
Economic Development
Commission, not
coun-
council.
Council.
Not council.
Council.
Commission.
So what's on page 53 ain't right.
Yeah, gotcha.
Is it?
So we highlight the number of visitors, the number of tourism-related businesses. I believe we got that from your EDC report, which was great help. We then pulled a bunch of information out of the River Cog's Grow Smart, which is the comprehensive economic development strategy there. And, these are always broad, but I think they talk about how the dynamics between the different communities kind of work together. We then go through and, from the 250,000 visitors at the Gillette Castle, as well as the 130,000 patrons annually at Goodspeed. So a lot of activity. I think we were trying to drive home the vibrancy of the area for tourism. Then give a little blurb about the Connecticut River Gateway charge. I have another blank picture of Devil's Hop Yard. And then our general regional action items.
What page are we on?
57.
7.
Way ahead, yeah.
Chapter 7.
Can we slow down once?
Yep.
I don't know if this has come up, and so it's not a criticism really. But one, whether it's in this chapter or the next one thing that hasn't really been mentioned, I don't think, is regionalization of municipal services. So we already share an animal control officer with East Hampton, and I think we're gonna do it with Colchester. The sanitarian comes from Chatham Health. Our assessor works part of the time in, I think it's Chester. and the probate court's been regionalized. But I don't see why it wouldn't be worthwhile giving some thought to other things that might be regionalized. Don't have to name them, just a goal of regionalizing municipal services with the aim of saving a buck.
Good point.
I didn't cover that, what he's asking for.
And I'm not sure.
But I'm open to listening in and having discussion on it. Some communities, as we're drafting PFCs now, are fearful of if they even open the door to potential regionalization at the service level, that'll then open the door to educational regionalization, it'll open the door to losing control of their own autonomy.
I'm thinking that that might be a subject that the selectmen should take up as opposed to.
I'm just raising the question.
Yeah, well, you can raise it again when we have the public hearing and or when the, or put a note into the selectmen if you feel that, we wanna mention that.
Okay.
Do it at a higher level.
So why wouldn't we wanna say it?
Yeah,
Maybe not everybody wants to regionalize almost anything.
Right, and if you mention it, then it's like,
Deal with
oh.
Chatham Health and you'll know why.
there's a rampant fear right now over how the new administration
Yeah, wants to-
broached that topic.
Yeah.
And anybody who's drafting things, they've decided to just be silent on it and let that take its course rather than having it used against them for some things that they would have never regionalized.
As it applies to schools,
Yeah,
and
that's a
there's a
pretty,
wedge issue.
That's the focus.
so when we thought about it, we said, it's something that you're gonna continue to do. It's something you're not likely gonna get any support from to do because you're doing it out of necessity. So we thought we'll just leave it the way it is, and if you continue to work around the fringes and doing it for your own benefit, that's great, but it's not something we wanna open the door and somebody's gonna say, well, I mean, if you're open to regionalizing more town services, why don't we open the door to regionalizing education?
Which they did back in the late sixties and seventies, and Haddam decided not to do it.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
I understand that.
Thank you.
So
sir.
I'd be glad to get more input, I just don't, it probably should come from the selectmen on
Yeah.
that. I just didn't wanna put something out there that says,
No,
I mean, yes, it could be a planning thing, but I
it could be a
think,
planning.
Well, let me ask
but
you,
when you get on the state level and start
People are
looking
all
at
amped
it.
up over that, so.
yeah, no, I understand staying away from the education.
I mean, I'd
Finance
rather,
is-
if the selectmen decide that they would like it, we can do it. I don't have a problem with it at that
no,
level.
When we regionalize some of the things that Harvey mentioned earlier,
Those are really shared services, not regionalization. So, as Harvey described it to me, when I hear that,
yeah,
you're sharing staff,
Yeah.
you're sharing
well,
services.
I don't care.
what's the difference? I mean,
Yes, I mean, you can always avoid the word regionalize and just go.
but are
Leave
we,
it out.
We've been beaten down with word regionalization.
are we achieving, grant money through some of these,
Yeah, that's why I kinda have the broad regionalization theme in there, to help you get grant money for projects.
I mean, do we get a grant money for the dog catcher being on both sides of the?
No, you just save on having a full-time dog
Yeah,
catcher.
yeah.
Yes, it's not really, it's shared, it's not
It's a shared
regionalized.
service.
There's no third party in charge of the
Right.
dog catcher.
No,
Half
it's
the time he
not
works for us, half the time he works for Chester.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Okay. On to chapter 7. Grow the grand list to maintain the town's quality of life. We intro this of talking about the local, county, and state unemployment rates, the improvement we've seen there, getting into your bond rating, your top grand list value or top taxpayers, the current mill rate, and then we look at your grand list composition relative to some of the surrounding towns in the state. Compare your grand list amongst your peer group, where you're right in the middle of that from a mill rate standpoint, compare your mill rate to it, where you're right in the middle of that from a mill rate standpoint, speaks to the fiscal stability of the town. We then get into the, a little bit more detail on just some of the key points to maintaining that, to be able to provide sort of the quality of what you're doing, as well as to be able to provide, some sort of fiscal buffer for where you're going. We do mention, some of the work of the EDC, and here we actually have it noted right as the commission, what happened with the council on there. And then we get into our more focused rather than town-wide economic development strategies for Budas, where within Budas we talk about, just some of the not so great failed urban renewal efforts, reflect back on the survey of what people would like to see there, talk about your consumer spending and, more so Budas being that for those of residents there. Discuss a little bit on the ADTs or the traffic volumes having a detriment to the business community. Discuss some revitalization efforts, some beautification efforts for both public and private, and then get into a little discussion on some key sites, and of those key sites, the redevelopment opportunities, and being able to, basically clean and get them back on the grand list. We then move into discussion along East Haddam Village Center, talk about the recent activities there. Really the big ones that are happening there are what's going on with the former town hall or town municipal office site. Discuss the history there of studying the mobility study. Still some strong needs there for improvements to traffic, parking, pedestrian access. Discuss Lumberyard Road, Opera House parking areas, untapped resources. Promote the fact that you already have the historic or the village district in place that gives you the rural character in a mixed-use environment. Then really try to tie it all together and looking at doing a true master plan there where you can pull all of the disparate entities and get them all to work together and take your economic development aspirations, your development aspirations, your infrastructure, which is really your transportation and your pedestrian parking, and build them all together into a cohesive master plan that you can follow and wrap that around a branding and marketing plan. Next, we roll through to the Four Corners, Town Street, talk about its connections there, its opportunities for tourism-related business, as well as the potential future opportunities for some cyclists there. We talked about the concept planning that we did there that showed that, there is some infill development that could happen in a character that fits within what you're trying to do, and laid out some logical next steps. We know that this one was a big wedge issue with the workshop where we counted stickers up 50-50. As we went into our recommendations, we left you with enough flexibility to move this into another planning process that the PCC would run to make the final determination on what you wanted to do there or not do there.
You mentioned the 5 underutilized properties. Can you identify those?
Yes, they are.
And should you identify those?
I don't think we can identify them in the document.
Not in
Well,
the document.
I provided that documentation, you guys have that documentation. I did not want to put bullseyes on everything here, I wanted to go through the activity of saying, there really is some real true development potential here, and even with using the existing soils and keeping in the character, just to be able to provide some facts and some feasibility to what we were all discussing.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
they're
don't
gonna,
want
they're gonna
bullseye.
be beating down Jim's door when they read that part.
Telling you, Hooters.
Wearing out the hinges on the door, no doubt.
So I'm just gonna call it, rather than 5, I'll call it several
There you go.
underutilized properties.
Very good.
On 67, the last bullet point, in Moody's consider design standards for commercial industrial buildings and support site uses to ensure they are visually compatible. Are there grant opportunities to owners of the existing unfortunate buildings beautify them?
It used to be.
There used to be, would it qualify for a Connecticut Main Street program?
If the old Main Street was there maybe, but
Yeah, the old Main Street would have been perfect.
It's so far gone that I don't know if it would qualify for those programs.
But part of the problem is it's so far gone, we can't even get it back to being close to one of those programs.
I know. It's,
I
that's
mean, there's
what,
some really unfortunate architecture there.
are you calling it architecture?
Or lack thereof.
What are
He's
you
an
referring
engineer,
to?
he's not an architect.
Which building are you referring to?
Pizza Hut.
Pick 'em. And Nathan Hale is not that.
There's no consistency
Yeah,
with
there's
any
no,
of it.
there's no consistency.
Oh, we all know that, yeah.
The building across from the oil guys, across from Nathan Hale,
That's the old Cumberland Farms.
the old Cumberland Farms, but across from the
old theater.
next to next to
The old Cumberland Farms. used to be black.
next to the no, well, Muda's Auto is it needs a good strong wind. No, on the other side of
Where
The guy used to
That's
repair
Dutch.
organs.
You're talking about
no,
Dutch.
not Dutch. Dutch is in the corner. Who's
Yeah, no, the old Modus lumber buildings.
Yeah,
yeah
exactly.
across.
That was the theater,
okay.
one was the
Yeah.
theater,
Oh,
the other one
yeah.
was the
It's
warehouse.
like gold
That's
painted
Scott's,
cinder block.
yeah,
Scott's.
Scott's.
Gold
yeah.
painted cinder block. It's really not good.
I mean, all you can really do is you can ensure that future sins don't occur through some design standards, but trying to get them to incentivize to beautify is
I
kind of.
mean, you know, if you go up the road, when we got a hold of the Newton building, the one that Dutch is now, we told them, you're gonna be 20 feet off the road, it's gonna be wood siding, you comply, you put wood siding in it. We told Dutch you're 400 or 500 feet off the road where you're gonna have to have some architectural instead of just a steel building, he complied with it. You know, Mark Brandt said this when he first came to town, he said, there'll be a day when that building will get rid of its use, talking about Buddhist
Oh, center.
center. He was, there'll be a day, and only until then you can redesign it and redo it.
But the problem with the area is the traffic count. You have it right there. Without traffic count, you have no retail. This isn't a retail area. It basically, it's great for Dutch, it's great for a Brownell company, that's what it is.
Area.
But it's not your retail area, because you gotta go down to the Four Corners, there's where the traffic counts are.
Yeah,
You gotta
but-
go down to the center of town.
but if I'm
That's not even.
I did.
Oh, no, it isn't, but it's better.
It's at 15,000.
if I don't want to get on 9 to come home from Chester, I go down. What is it? 154. 4. Thank you. But I cut through Chester, and the main commercial area is that loop down Main Street. That's now we can't do that anymore. We lost that. It's beautiful, and there's a reason to go down there, and that has commercial traction. Yet the ADT count on that is probably just
very
as
low.
dismal as Mutis.
It's like
But there's a reason to go there.
Yeah,
If you
but-
beautify Mutis, it's kind of,
Chicken and egg self.
it's self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
You have a place.
Totally
You have a
agree.
place in Chester Center there.
You do have a
In the
place,
village. You have
but
a
we
place.
can't develop a place in Mutis because it's so butt ugly.
Well, you have Plains Road right here is the only thing that's left that you almost could.
I don't
Yeah.
dispute any of this.
Maybe.
The question was, are there still grant opportunities that you can get a low interest loan to beautify Nathan Hale Plaza? And not that they would, but try to get somebody to fix up something, and you need,
That's like pulling teeth.
yeah, you need the one kernel though, that then incentivizes somebody else to do something.
But wasn't Phil Barlow working on like landscape beautification of Mutis years ago? And, looking for something that
Well, I
could make
think
that
we-
place look a little
I think
nicer?
that's where we worked hard on incorporating into our parking design, so that, when we do the parking regulations, they're very heavily landscaped, so that we went with, first, a reduced number of parking, because nobody's ever there, and secondly, lighting, landscaping, and stormwater management, but that's a kind of, you're in your holding pattern, sit, wait until somebody comes in with an application, and then you apply those standards. It's tough to ask somebody who doesn't have, as Bob was saying, doesn't have enough business to say, well, we really need you to invest $68,000 next month.
Because it looks so much prettier for us.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll get more customers there.
Yeah,
And
keep,
that is the other problem with any time, in any of these businesses, how much upfront capital do you have to go open a business? And that is always a problem. You go to some place that's basically got the center of town, Deep River or something, you've got sewers, you've got water, you've got gas. So it's very easy, it's a very low investment for a business to go open up something. And they're all full. And same way with Chester. Why do we go over there? Basically because you have a density of restaurants right there. They're only there because they have sewers and they have water. It wouldn't be there And that's what it takes in order to get
Quaintness.
businesses going.
Yeah, and you
But
have
also
some,
the architecture.
Yeah.
and you have some housing density around the center too.
Yeah.
You've gotta have that, but,
Mm-hmm.
one thing I would like to bring up is is in basically in the East Haddam Village area, I think we need the master plan. That's, I think, the most critical thing.
Yeah.
And basically, Good Speed is doing that. We had the opportunity to get on board with that, we didn't. I think it was a big error, but I see you have in there about having a master plan for that area. I think it's totally critical, that we become a part of the process down there. Right now, Goodspeed's doing the whole thing, and we're not at the table, so we don't get any say. And I think it's a big error on our part. That we
Where is
haven't
that,
been at the
where do
table.
you have that, Mike?
Page 63.
Okay, where not?
Well, isn't that what we're waiting for, RFP?
No,
No,
that's
that's
basically,
the-
that's
That's
just
for
one
that-
site.
just for that
so
site.
So that has nothing to do with the
You're
village.
saying a master
We need
plan.
a master plan
For the
of
whole
the
village center.
Okay.
because basically the Goodspeed is now designing what they're gonna do with their properties.
Right.
But we need to be working with them, and they need to be working with us.
So I'm waiting on this RFP that's only gonna incorporate 2.5 acres.
Exactly, exactly. And we need it for the 15 acres.
Yeah, that's
of
just
all.
the village
So let's
revitalization.
ask the big question, because the fact of the matter is, since they're doing it, I have asked, I said, do you think maybe you'd like to lay some of your preliminary stuff out in front to see if it complies with zoning, or maybe if you need a zone change, we can start working on that now? And I got, oh, that'd be a good idea, but I haven't got a return phone call.
Right.
Right.
So, and you know, Mark was working with that, and I wasn't included in the conversation or the sit down on that. So when you have the Board of Selectmen working on a master plan, which wasn't their job, imagine that, somebody
Yeah.
doing that around here.
This is what happens
And
all
then
the
not
time.
bringing the zoning commission to be part of it, voila.
Yeah,
So
but
we're,
it's needed.
I know it's needed,
I don't
but-
care who does it,
but-
it's just like it's
but the
needed.
fact is that, you know,
How long have they been working on it?
Oh, Goodspeed?
Yeah,
Year.
and it actually started back when Mark was here.
okay.
Oh, yeah, but I mean now they've got somebody who's actually, they have a
Yeah.
contract out there now
Yeah.
with somebody who's doing it.
But I have asked, as
Yeah.
recently as 2 months ago.
I have too.
So you're saying the
You haven't got
Goodspeed
invited to
Opera
the table
House,
either.
I think we need a facilitator.
you're saying the Goodspeed Opera House has a plan.
Well,
that
we're
They're
working
working on a
on it.
plan of all their
On
properties
their
in the
properties.
Goodspeed area. So what are they gonna do with,
That
what are
we
they gonna
have-
do with Williams Chevrolet?
That we have no idea what they're doing.
Nope.
Well, it's all privately owned.
But equally, we're not at the table even to take and talk
It's
about
also, it also has a state highway running through it.
Yeah, I know.
I mean-
it.
It's still privately.
One other thing I'd just like to bring up, on the Four Corners, we've been trying to take and work around the adaptive reuse of existing buildings. We feel that that's the best we can do with the whole area. And I thought maybe that'd be a nice thing to put in there, that we're working on some of that. And this is, basically shag bark. It gives a little story as to what it is, what it was. I mean, it was a cow barn out there, and basically transforming it into one of our biggest taxpayers. Also, wrestling cats. That was a private residence, and now it's basically probably one of the most popular spots in town for coffees, and it's become a nice little meeting spot. And then one that I personally am working on is 382 Town Street, which is, again, was a rehab, a use of an existing facility, which is gonna put it basically back into an entirely commercial use now. So we changed it from residential to commercial on all three of these, and I think what we're doing is getting something on the grand list. And I think this is what's acceptable to the community, to utilize these properties, but we gotta find a new use for them. Their use of what it has been isn't gonna go any longer. But we have to do that with architecture, which you're doing. I think you're on all of these, you're working with one of them right now for an expansion. It's going through architectural review. That was the best thing that we could have done with this. And I think that that would be a good thing to bring out as a positive.
Send me the digital so I can put the high quality ones right in there. Thank you.
And then send it to me too, since you're on film saying you got a presentation, someone's gonna go,
We're on
where is it?
film?
I go, I don't have a copy, so kick it to me.
Yeah, okay. And, but I think it'll be something where, it's a positive thing that's happening for the Granza. And it's a positive route, and I think it falls into place with what the community is looking for. Whether
While,
it's-
while we're on the subject of the Four Corners, the parking lot at the pond there, is owned by the Lions.
Club. Yeah.
I think a great benefit would be some type of a commuter parking lot there. And I don't know if it's feasible or not. I know in our last plan of conservation and development, we had a piece about expanding or making, looking into possible commuter lots around town,
Well, just to the east of that, where Shagbark Park, that's state land. How far, is that just in the state right away off the highway that they use? Okay. Well, that's privately owned, so we can't really
That's
do
what
much.
I'm, well, don't say I can't. I mean, the Lions is a community organization, and in conjunction with the town, is it feasible to put together some kind of a plan? I know that we talked about having sidewalks.
Right.
come-
I mean, basically, that's what the economic development is looking, basically to see how we can get better traffic around that area, and certainly this board supported that. And I think that having a walkway across to that parking lot is what the Lions Club would like to see, so that people can get over to the coffee shops, and basically, I think yours is falling right into that community use of the area. And I think the Lions would be very open to talk about something like that. They've been very good with us. We've asked to use it, and they say absolutely.
So under transportation, did we mention anything about commuter lots, or,
No, I don't know of,
and should we?
I don't know of many commuter lots that aren't state-owned. I actually don't know of any commuter lots that aren't state-owned.
Usually they're
Why is
at
that?
intersections near state highways, where there are pinch points where you can, gather many people.
Well, whether the
and-
Lions Club likes it or not, theirs is being used that way, because
Correct.
there's constantly being people parking there and picking up somebody else and
And
going.
you'd love to see an agreement of some sort, or maybe beautification or expansion.
I think liability is what everybody worries about there.
Well, it'd have to be something between the community and the
Yeah.
Lions Club,
Yeah.
basically saying, we're gonna make this into a community parking area. We'll dress it up a little bit and basically give them a policy that rides with the town's liability policy. We have that all-encompassing liability policy.
But if the lot's acting as it now with nobody positively promoting it, why do we want to incur town liability? If I go down and park there, and my wife comes and picks me up and we drive off someplace, or my friend comes and picks me up and we drive off someplace, the Lions Club's not gonna come ticket me, they're never gonna tow my car, and I know that. I parked my car there when I was looking for houses in East Haddam. If I know it's a commuter lot and I park there and I get out and twist my ankle, now I have somebody I can go after. The town didn't maintain that properly. So now you're gonna help pay my medical bill. And I'm not quite sure why the town should enter that liability.
Well, that's the discussion that everybody would have, I mean.
And I guess, in that open session, I don't think we had one comment saying provide commuter. When we went to the survey, there was no,
Yeah,
it
you're
was
right.
never identified as a need, so, that's kinda like,
We did have it in the last plan, though.
we had it in the last plan, we talked about it.
Ride sharing's down though globally. It is.
It's cause people are working out of their house.
A lot of people are, or working modified schedules.
So you're saying because of the liability issue, it's a bad idea? to have
I don't think
commuter
Lions
parking?
Club's gonna wanna take on the co-risk. But, I don't think our job is to solve it, tonight. It's, our job is, the question is do we continue the statement to explore the potential of commuter parking lots if it's needed? That wouldn't be a bad statement in the plan,
I'd like to see it.
I'll put it under transportation.
The other thing is, it isn't all that big a space.
and,
No.
Bob and I know that there is a legion of people who will write letters if we go to expand that parking lot.
Yes, helpful.
Couple of 100 and some letters, wasn't it? Because of an orchid.
Yeah, you gotta know if you don't get near the orchards.
Oh my.
Wait till you put lighting in there.
No, we did
No,
not.
that was already.
It's one of the more popular
Street light.
spots when there's ice on that pond.
Okay, Mike, where are we?
That wraps up the economic development with, the comments we have now.
Bob, are you, I'm sorry to interrupt, are you all set on?
Yeah, I think that, you know, basically, I still think that, any kind of infrastructure is important. It makes it so that businesses can afford to basically, go into these areas. When you have high cost to build a building and infrastructure costs, it definitely limits our ability to take and sell a project. And our costs in East Haddam are extremely high in order to open up any business because of basically the cost of infrastructure. All our neighbors have the infrastructure in the ground. All of the commercial areas have water and they have sewers. And that's why their commercial areas are a lot more busier than ours are. And that's why we're weak in every one of them. And we need infrastructure. And we have water now 50 feet from the edge of the Connecticut River. There's an 8-inch main sitting right there. And we have not done one thing to go over and get that water and bring that over to the village. And why we don't do that is beyond me. And I think that it's sitting there, it's great for fire protection. If you want to build a building that's over 3 stories, you got to sprinkler it. How do you sprinkler it if you don't have city water? And basically, it really limits us. And I think we should be putting in this plan that basically we need infrastructure. We need sewers and we need water.
Well, we could at least put in that we need, cause we're,
Water, we got the
we're
sewer.
exploring the possibilities of, you know, city water, city sewer, whatever. I mean, we have sewers in the village, city water is kind of a natural.
Yep.
It is across the street. I mean,
But-
what's the wording we could use there to?
Well, the problem is that, you know, the reason they have water, and it took them since 1963
contaminated.
to
Yeah,
get it.
TCE and their,
Yeah, they
TCE
had a
underground water.
community
Yeah, pollution.
pollution problem.
Yeah.
And it took not just a few decades, it took 53 years to get it there. Right now, East Hampton, and that's why I sit in this water utility board meeting, East Hampton is in desperate look of having water. Yeah, the look.
what do you have,
So-
what do you have from my company, Scott Pagnotti?
No, Genie,
Janine?
yeah. So, being
Would the
said,
commission
they've got.
like to put something in for water?
Well, I thought we were talking about Four Corners, but
both.
you're talking,
To the village.
Well,
Talking about
Corners
the
and
village.
down
The
to
village
Center
for
Village.
water,
That's-
because it's so close.
but that's
water
a
in
huge,
Tylerville.
that's a heavy
So,
lift
so
to go
here's the
from the.
language, here's the language you want for East Hampton Village, because
Alright.
if you're gonna say East Hampton Village, if it ever becomes economically feasible to transport water from the Tylerville section, the town should explore methods of incorporating it along with the sewer system that's in place. Because other than that, the reality is that, you know, the state's looking to fund East Hampton at, what did I tell you, $60 million? $80 million, $80 million to run it to East Hampton. Nobody has the money for it. Old Lyme has an entire section down there that they need 35 to 45 million. And Connecticut Water said, I don't have the water to give to them. They said, well, we're gonna give you the association with defunct. Okay, and the state said, you know, they have the right to assign water rights. And right now, there's so little water there that they said if we suck any more, we're gonna start getting saltwater infusion. So there's, you know, the reality is that the only reason Tyler got it is because of the chemicals and the contamination, and it never would have been there.
But you can't tell me.
We have a situation though that it's basically $1 million and you can have it across into the village and then just.
But who's paying for it? That's the question.
Yeah, but, and we do, and.
So that's why I said if it's
But that's-
economically feasible, we
Yeah.
left it at that.
$1 million
I think
is
just open the
economically
door, that's
feasible.
all. if you can't get grants unless this plan says that it's something that
Correct.
we're looking
Alright,
at.
so it's
But there's gotta be a plan to get water across the river, cause why did they put an 8-inch main down there? They did it because they thought they might have to supply the other side. I mean, they must have thought of that,
Someday it's coming, obviously.
cause that's a pretty big main to end up at Eagles Landing
Yes.
for,
Yeah.
what, 15
Yes, 8
cottages?
inches is the minimum water.
Pardon?
Yeah, it's the minimum.
Minimum
That's
water.
minimum size main?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a minimum
You can
main.
do a private job and they'll tell you, like Johnsonville, we were gonna do 200 units, and Fuss O'Neill had 8-inch mains in the plan. I said, what are you doing? That's what they're requiring me to
Usually
do.
fire protection's 8 inches.
8-inch, huh?
So you got the wording?
If economically feasible, explore methods for supplying public water to East Haddam Village under economic development.
Okay.
Long-term goal. Board of,
Yes.
long-term board of Selectmen.
Somewhere else.
Planning and zoning also.
Yeah, planning to, I don't know.
You can put P and Z.
As a support. Alright,
Future land use.
future land use, we have our future land use map, as well as our future land use categories.
Can I ask you a quick question? 'Cause
Yes.
I don't know, I don't know if I've gone through this, but you've got conservation areas and they got 1 through 7 criteria. Is that off of the state criteria?
Where are you, Jay?
On the map itself.
No, you're talking about on the map on page 76. Yeah, that's their, check the box on how many criteria they meet.
Okay, so
Oh, there.
this is generated from the state.
This is all the state's, plan of conservation and development.
Maybe we
Yes.
need to just note that, you know. Cause it says it's GIS data, but it doesn't say it's state criteria.
I will note that.
Cause everybody was looking at me saying, what's my 1 through 3? But I understand from the state point.
Yeah.
And the only other thing is that we gotta somehow put a box with clearness in it. Cause you have 1 priority funding areas and you just can't, I can't see it.
So for conservation areas, the state has a 1 to 7
Yeah,
ranking.
you know, and it is, it's the same thing that we have in our open space thing. Is it connected to other
right.
areas? Does it contain block forest? Does it contain
Mhm.
streams? You know, it runs right down the gauntlet.
So this comes from DEP,
OPM.
this map, OPM. Does it say that?
Yeah, it should say that, it does, and I'll add it on there.
Yeah.
So it goes through your plan and the state plan, I think, page 74 and 75. Talk about really kind of consistency with the growth management principles, and we relate those to your growth management as well as your protection strategies. And we relate those to your goals and your protection strategies to show the consistency. Obviously, this is based on the one that's adopted now. I think the new plan is in draft form for the state, but it has yet to be adopted and supported, so. And then we go through the,
There's currently no regional plan?
no, they've been working the last
Are we working off a prior document?
Yeah, the mid-state,
mid-states.
which is old.
It's really, really old. So what we did with Chester, because it's in the same boat, they advised us just to not compare to it because it's so old. Many of the recommendations were circa 1996, 98. So they just said to note that Rivercog is working on their plan. My guess is maybe Rivercog is waiting to get all the local plans adopted, and then they'll use that as the basis to update their plan. I'm really not quite sure, they've been working on it for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they started that like three years ago.
Yeah, maybe 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
So, it makes it easy, because it's pretty easy to be consistent when there's nothing there. You get to kind of, get to direct the boss. And then it's just your action agenda, and I did pick up on a couple little formatting things here, so you pointed out. So that's really it.
I did some switching and swapping of priorities and who's in charge.
Good.
And then some of it's just, a lot of it's just, like, throughout here, you'll see notes, I may have added something, but sometimes it's just, like, it said Park and Rec, and it meant to be Planning and Zoning Commission,
Okay.
you know? Just Park and Rec isn't in charge of reviewing new construction and regs. So they're minor, there's no change in.
You have Parks and Rec review bike racks?
Not when it comes from plan review.
Oh, I didn't know that here,
Yeah.
honestly. Some of them, we go through the process of going to Parks and Rec and then plan review.
And then I added the East Haddam Lakes Association, because I stiffed them with stuff
Got it.
Kurt,
Kurt, could I, just on page 80 here, right at the top, strategies, we've got continue to maintain and enhance the town's events magazine and the town's website to serve as important opportunities for volunteer organizations to communicate. I'd certainly like to see the East Haddam News in here.
Absolutely.
That's the one place you probably have the most communications.
I thought I brought that up at the last meeting.
It's in there somewhere.
You did
Somewhere
mention
there's
put it
some
in there,
mention
but I do
about it.
remember discussing it, I got it in now.
It's mentioned somewhere else.
Yeah, it is mentioned in the
there.
body.
Mentions word for
It's in the
Is
document.
there anything in here that says, expansion of the Moodus, green area?
Yep.
Elimination of the,
That was in there somewhere too.
There's something about to
did?
utilize it more, yeah,
I think it was,
in the body.
specifically removing the road?
No, no, no.
No,
It just said make it.
I did
Make
not.
it a focal point of the
Yeah.
Make
village.
it a focal point of the village, but not remove the road.
Well,
there
that
is
was
somewhere where it says to move
That's
on to the
expensive.
second phase of the plan
Plan
for
for
the village,
the village.
which that was the second phase.
Okay, good.
know that the state would.
Hmm?
We're waiting for the state on that one.
Well, let's see, we're only how
We'll
many
wait
years
forever.
into the 53-year wait period?
Does he want?
It's not on the top of the priority.
Nick?
Square, you want those photos back?
I'll pass them down to Jim.
Okay, good meeting.
I never go there.
I think so. Did I hear? Oh, that's your job.
Oh, the cup, right?
Ed's in charge of this.
Okay, so where does that leave us?
It leaves us with,
Yeah, but it has a lot of.
the comments I have, I'll revise those.
Yep,
I'll go
you have to go
through
through Jim's.
the
marked
Remo
up.
fuchsia post-its.
Really?
And then I'll provide another, it'll still be a draft. And then I would look to have you guys at your next meeting accept the draft.
Gotcha.
And then by accepting the draft, we start the referral process.
So we have the 90 days.
We would then provide it to the deed, provide it to, the referring bodies according to my spreadsheet or the chart. And then, still feed input on this. So I'm not gonna change the document, I'm not gonna edit the document. We're gonna create a master list of all the input, see if any of the input we receive from the various referral bodies conflict, resolve the conflicts. Soak that 65 days and then basically make the final edits to create the final plan and then adopt the final plan.
Go to public hearing, the whole nine
But once we submit the DEP, we have a minimum 90 days.
Minimum 9 days. And you may not receive anything from them. We did not in Chester at all. It's
But we
just-
can take more if we need it. We get to schedule public hearings and such.
Right, so if we,
Right.
It's not a restriction.
So, yeah, so that's
You're
what,
gonna be in July 4th.
Yeah, exactly. Done that.
Now, if I remember correct, we do the public hearing, not the selectmen, correct?
It's actually a different thing. We do a public hearing for it to hear what's going on,
it's a joint for adoption.
but then they have to adopt it, it's a town
Town
meeting.
meeting, yeah. So then the
So
select,
that's the,
selectmen actually do it.
As long as we don't turn into another class.
I still hear the stories about that in my office. That was like, that was the highlight of like the workshops for like the last 5 years. And actually, we have some people who are from Glastonbury, like, I don't know why Glastonbury is so bad, I don't think it was that bad here.
But everyone wants to move there.
Yeah.
My office manager lives in hellhole.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I was told to put in my pipe and smoke it.
if people don't wanna move there, there's somebody who's invested a boatload of money in building new apartment condominium type things near the intersection of Route 2 and
Oh, it's
Yeah,
very
well, that
possible.
took a couple of years to
It
get
took a
that.
couple of years to go through, yeah.
Route 2 and what?
Route
By
2 and,
17.
Hebron Avenue.
Yep,
Oh, okay.
for that nice traffic circle.
Old Brothers just did a massive development, they all sold out, so.
Well, at least
I mean,
one of them
somebody
has a
else wants
radius
to go
right.
there.
Yeah, it's pretty tight.
All right,
Anyone have
Motion
anything
to-
else before you make your motion? We all set?
Yep, we're good.
Okay,
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
negative.
Well, I'm not sick.
Well, I'm tired of it. Seriously. What the hell is this game? No, they started at 8.
So you give you some ideas,
think it's
so where you
not
going there,
7.
just a vacation or look? We went there to looky, like
They want us to
hopscotch
stay
looky.
up late, watch these things.
Cheetahs,
But now you're at the second round, so there's only one game.
great places to eat. Yeah, you know, if it's a Long Beach, can't walk, I mean, you probably would. From there up to the boardwalk, it's probably a 10-minute drive.
Yeah, with
Yeah, yeah.
he's a good guy.
Well, it's a ways, I mean, you can, from there, I think you just barely see the boardwalk. There's some great restaurants right there, we ate in one, it was all glass and stuff, right by the, so this is the boardwalk, it was like we're sitting here, and you can walk down and, you know, you can pick the boardwalk. The pier, I should say the pier is there. And the boardwalk, I think, starts at, I wanna say 14th Street, and it goes up to, I don't know what, on this is, the pier's sort of in the middle of it, it's a nice boardwalk.
entertaining, I like that.
All wooden and everything, you know.
Alright.
We were there on season. Everybody says you gotta go there
Yeah.
during the season.